different options, different things we can have, different things we should do, and we try to be reasonable in our decision making, right? We try to make rational choices based on good evidence about what the right decision is. When we make decisions, we like to believe that we are making those decisions based on the utility of the various outcomes. So when I say utility in this context, I mean, so obviously I'm making choices for a reason, right? I have to choose, for example, which class I'm going to take in the summer. Signing up to take my last couple of classes before I graduate, I have to choose which classes those are going to be. And you know, I want to make sure that those are classes that are going to fulfill whatever my last few requirements are, that they're going to be classes that will fit my work schedule.
They don't require math.
That don't require math, maybe. I don't know, whatever. So you have your particular goals, the things that you want, and you're trying to figure out which of the outcomes you could pursue that will get you what you want and fulfill your other needs. Right? Now, everybody has signed up and taken a class they didn't really want to take just because they had to take it. Right? Or they've taken a class that didn't fit their schedule because they're just not into it. Right? Well, work it out, figure it out, right? So we don't always get exactly what we want, but typically we're thinking about the utility of different outcomes. We want to maximize us getting what we want. Right? That's a pretty reasonable thing. That's how we make lots of choices. And in different situations, we value and weight different things, so that's going to influence what we consider to be, for a particular decision to have good utility versus another situation. Now, when people are engaging in decision making, though, it's not just being reasonable and rational and thinking about the different outcomes. We also think about cost and benefit. And we want, obviously, to get as much benefit out of our choice as possible with as little cost as possible. That seems to make sense, right? And depending on our situation, we may view cost and benefit quite differently. Under some circumstances, we tend to be risk averse. Now, risk aversion means that you're going to avoid choices that appear to cost you something. And we're more likely to be risk averse when we feel like we're currently in a good position or we're in a position of gain. So if I'm in a good position, I don't want to lose ground. So I'm going to avoid things that that seem to me to be more likely to bring risk. Even if the risk is relatively small and the benefit could be huge. Right? If I'm in a position if I'm on a solid, positive position, I'm more likely to choose an option that I perceive as having as little risk as possible, because I want to stay in my positive position. Now, sometimes we are risk takers, especially when there's a gain to be had and we think we're in a current state of loss. This is the kind of, I got nothing to lose, right? Go for it. We'll take risks we might not otherwise take if we think there's nothing left to lose, or what we could lose isn't worth keeping, or the gain is so incredible that we can't turn it down. So it's not just being reasonable and rational, there's also our perception of where we are relative to where we could be if we made a different choice, and how much we want change. People like, if they feel they're in a positive position, they're less likely to want to move out of that positive position. Although there are people who, even when they're in a positive position, are still risk takers, right? They will risk everything, every time, for the big reward. That adrenaline rush is what makes them go. Right? But most people from a positive position will be risk averse and will only be really risk taking when they perceive that the gain is, that they're in either in a pretty strong position of loss, or the gain is so great they can't resist. Now, as those situations suggest, sometimes our decisions are influenced not by rational thought or by our reasonable assessment of cost and benefit, but by our emotional assessment of cost and benefit. Obviously we're rational beings. We can think logically. We can evaluate evidence reasonably, but we are also emotional creatures. And so when I'm going to make a decision, I think about how am I going to feel if I make this decision? How am I going to feel if I make that decision? And obviously one of the costs or benefits to me is my expected emotion. If I think I'm going to feel great if I do that, then I'm more likely to make that choice, even if it's going to be high cost. Right? Think about the people who work out all the time because they feel really good when they look a particular way. And they're like, even though this is going to have a huge cost for me, and I'm going to have to give up a lot of things to have that body, I think I'm going to feel so great when I look like that picture, I'm going to do it. Or, I really want this thing. I really think that guy's hot. I really want to go out with him, but he's already got a girlfriend, and I would feel like crap if I broke them up, because that's just, even though the benefits would be great, because check out his benefits. I would feel like a bad person, and I don't want to feel like that. So those are your expected emotions, and those can contribute to things like risk aversion. Because if you think, because feeling bad about something, you want to avoid that, right? That's a risk that you're going to hurt. Your risk you're going to be sad, or a risk you're going to be upset, or a risk you're not going to feel good. So that's something that you want to avoid. Or if you think you're going to feel really happy doing something, then you might be risk-taking if you think that it's going to give you a really positive feeling. So it's not just, we don't just think about outcomes in practical terms, we also think about them in terms of how we'll feel in that place, having achieved that particular goal. And then there's also our incidental emotions. These are things that don't really have to do with the decision itself, but just reflect how we're feeling right now. For example, say you're walking down the street and you see somebody panhandling. Well, you have to make a choice, right? Do you act like they don't exist? Do you acknowledge their existence? Treat them like a human being? Do you give them money? Right? Do you walk to McDonald's and buy them a sandwich and come back and give it to them? You have choices. Okay. And how you are feeling right now about other things in your life may influence how you behave. So for example, if somebody just did something really nice for you and you're feeling really good, you're more likely to pay it forward and do something really nice for that person. Even if there's no benefit to you at all. In fact, it's all cost, handing that person a $5 bill or $1 or whatever change you've got in your pocket. There's no rational benefit to giving away money to somebody you don't know. But if you are in a positive mood, you feel good. And you want to spread the wealth. You know, it's nice. You're going to share the good. Feels good to share the good. And if you are in a bad mood, and somebody could do the littlest thing, and you make a choice to jump down their throat, right? You could just let it go. But no, you make a choice to get all up in their face and make a big, because you're having a bad day. Right? It's not anything about the decision itself. It's the exact same thing. It happened under different circumstances. You would have behaved a different way. But it's just because of how you're feeling at that time, you make a different choice. Here's some examples. Here's what talked about in your text, where they asked people how they would feel about a particular coin flip, and the different coin flips had different outcomes. So they can lose $3 if they get one kind of flip, and they can win $5 if they have a different kind of flip. And they asked people first how they thought they would feel with a particular outcome. What's interesting is that people report that if they got a loss, they think that they would feel really, really bad. Right? Nobody wants to lose $3. So they report they would feel really bad. And they reported that if they win, they would feel really good. Not as good as they would feel bad if they lost, even though it's more money, which is kind of ironic. But beforehand, they would report that if they lost, they would feel really bad. And if they won, they would feel good, but not as good. Now, what's odd about this is an issue of expected emotion, right? This is how they expect to feel once whatever happens. Well, then they actually flip the coin. And people lose and people win. And when people lost, they said, okay, how do you feel? How bad do you feel about losing that $3? And people were like, I kind of feel about this bad. In reality, I feel about this bad, about losing that $3. And when I win, I feel about this good. Now, what do you notice about their expected emotion versus their actual emotion when it happens? They don't match at all. In fact, people anticipate feeling much worse about a loss than they ultimately end up feeling. So they think of the emotional loss or the physical loss or whatever kind of loss as being much worse than it actually is when they're in it. And if you think the loss is going to hurt a lot more, you're going to be more risk averse. Right? So people might be more risk averse than they need to be because they're overestimating how unhappy they'll be if the outcome comes out bad. Similarly, though, they think they're going to be super happy. Kind of sad. But they think they're going to be about twice as happy as they actually end up being when the outcome comes out how they want. I mean, winning $5, you're like, yay, $5. But, you know, okay, it's $5. What can you actually get for $5? On Marta. You can get a foot-long sandwich. No. Oh, there's tax. No, it won't work. You can buy one Starbucks coffee without the fancy stuff. So people are not good, even though they consider their expected emotion when making decisions. People actually overestimate how much bad feelings will be bad, and they overestimate how good feelings will be good. So knowing this, why is this useful information? Well, when you find yourself taking those expected emotions into consideration, understand that chances are your fear or concern about bad emotional consequences is probably not going to end up manifesting in reality. You're probably not going to feel that bad if the bad thing happens. Similarly, you're not going to feel as good if the good thing happens. So moderate that contribution of emotion into your decision, I mean, yeah, you're probably right. You'll know if you would feel somewhat bad or somewhat good, but just don't weigh this so much, because it's not actually going to end up being as extreme as you think. We talk about incidental emotion. This was in a study that they did where they had people who were in different emotional states, either neutral, in a state of disgust. I love that, inducing a state of disgust. Or who were feeling sad. And they gave them options. They gave them some pens, I think. They gave them some stuff to sell. And they said, okay, what price would you set to sell this thing? We've given you this thing. You can sell it for whatever you want. How much do you want to sell it for? And people who were in a neutral state set price of about $4.50 for the object. People who were in a state of disgust set it at a little bit, about $2.75. And people who were sad set it at about $3. So what's interesting here is how low the price is for disgust, because it seems that when you are in kind of a offended, disgusted state, you want to separate yourself from whatever it is that disgusts you or offends you. You want to push it away. So the people who were feeling disgusted were willing to sell the thing for a lower price because they want to get rid of it. And it doesn't really necessarily have anything to do with the object, but just when you're in a state of disgust, you push things away. And that's going to affect your choices, right? Because you're going to make choices that result in you pushing things away because you're in a state of offense or disgust. People who are sad tend to want change. They don't like being sad. So when we give people the option of buying things, buying a different one than the one they have, people who are sad will pay more money for the exact same thing just to have a different one. Because even though they don't really need the different thing, having a different one makes them feel better. This is called shopping therapy. Right? So when you feel bad and you go shopping, you're willing to pay more for stuff. You might be exactly the same as what you already have. Whereas if you were feeling in a better mood, you'd be like, I don't need that, I already have that, I'm good. So your emotion can lead you to make a choice. People are like, don't tell me that my shopping therapy is not real. It's real, I'm just saying. The data says that when you are in a sad mood, you're more likely to pay for relief.
So you're saying that when dramatic stuff takes place, like we say 9/11, 2 days or a day after that, people were feeling kind of funky.
Well, it depends. People were feeling really unsure, and that was a very different emotion, I think. People were, but people, I want you to think about when people are feeling kind of angry or upset, they tend to make more choices that push people away.
So, see, because I was trying to, if that's the case, then Thanksgiving, people sitting around eating, getting fat. Then they turn around on Friday and they go and spend everything. So,
well, all I can say is that Thanksgiving makes me sad. So I would not be surprised that the day after everyone's been forced to sit around with their family all day long, that the next day all they want to do is go shop. That doesn't surprise me, but that's just my personal opinion. But yeah, I mean, what they're going to try, the point is that if they know that emotional state is going to influence you, then they may try to get you to spend money. So, like, if they're like, give money to the children, give money to the puppies, give, and they show you a sad little puppy, and you're like, oh, sad puppy, here, more money. Let me give the sad puppy more money than the happy puppy, right? Now, they'll manipulate your emotions to get your money, too, to make your choice about that. I always think of this disgust one is like, you find out, you ever heard of cases like this where somebody cheats on somebody else and then the cheater calls up the person and says, oh, you have my stuff, can you sell it and send me the money? Mm-hmm. And it's like, yeah, I can sell it. I'm going to sell all your stuff for $1, and I'm going to send you the money. It's like, yeah, disgust. I want to get rid of this stuff as fast as I can, and I'm going to sell it for as cheap as I can so I can get rid of it, and I'll send you the money. All right, so if you want to make rational decisions, not just be influenced by emotion, but make rational decisions, what you need to do is gather lots of information. We're pulling this reasoning and decision-making thing together. You need to, making a decision is a form of problem solving, right? You got a problem. Your problem is you got choices. So you have to, your goal is to make choice, right? So problem solving is a kind, or decision making is a kind of problem solving. So if you want to be an effective decision maker, you have to make sure that your representation of the issues is good. Making good choices depends on understanding the relevant issues. Does that make sense? And you need to follow effective problem-solving strategies as well as effective reasoning strategies and avoid cognitive illusions in order to apply the information you have effectively and achieve that goal. That's what we all want to do, right? Make good decisions. So how can we, what are the steps we can follow to do this? What do we want to bring away? The number one thing that keeps people from making a good decision, being a decision that helps them get towards their goal and that they feel good about. The number one thing that keeps people from doing this is overconfidence. People feel like when they're making decisions that they need to make them on their own or somehow they don't count or something. And they over-rely on themselves when that might not be appropriate because of their own biases, their own cognitive illusions, their own emotions. Okay? So what can you do? You need to get more experience. If you don't know a lot about the situation, you need to get more data. You need more data. Don't just go with your gut. Get more data and more data. And get feedback. So feedback means you want to talk about the decisions that you're thinking about making with other people who aren't in the same emotional state, aren't thinking about the same, aren't experiencing the same symptoms of risk aversion or risk taking, people who might be more objective about the situation. Call you on shoddy thinking. Who can call you on making choices that might not be in your best interest. Got to be aware of those emotional factors. Yeah, we try to be reasonable, we try to be rational, but even if it's just in the way we think about risk, contributes to almost every decision we make. And yeah, we do have feelings about the choices we make when they're done, but remember, we are very poor at accurately estimating how we're going to feel when something's over. So don't put so much weight on your emotional expectations that you either take ridiculous risks or never move because you're afraid. Neither of those things are good. You want to make sure that the logical and statistical aspects are clear. So make sure you're clear on things like base rate information, likelihood, probability. The scientific evidence is good. You guys have survived 3530. You know about how to think scientifically. You know how to think critically. So make sure you look at the numbers too, not just with what people are saying. Look at the actual evidence. You have the skills to evaluate the evidence yourself. Don't just trust an authority because an authority says it's good. Don't just necessarily trust a group of people because they tell you that this is how you should think or what you should do. You can look at the evidence yourself and make logical decisions. And you want to cut back on intuition. It's a way of knowing, sure. It's a way of knowing what to do. That gut feeling that that's the right choice. But basing your decision on good statistical evidence, which you know what that looks like, and other kinds of factual data, objective factual data, like other people saying, you know that if you do this, you're gonna be miserable. You think you can, but just, I'm telling you, I've known you for 25 years. You're gonna hate yourself if you do this. Listen to other factual data and look at that. And with that suggestion, I encourage you all to move towards the success direction. Now get studying because you're almost graduating.